Namaste and good morning, India. Welcome to your daily update. On any given day, the headlines can feel like a random jumble of events. A trade dispute here, a political shuffle there, a natural disaster somewhere else. It's easy to see them as separate, disconnected stories. But what if they're not? What if they are all pieces of a much larger puzzle? Today, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to take the news from just a single 24-hour period in India, lay it all out on the table, and see the hidden web that ties everything together. This is calm, clear, and factual news. Namaskar.
Okay, let's just jump right in. Have a look at that question on your screen because that's our mission for today. It probably sounds a little crazy, right? I mean, what on earth could new tariffs from the US possibly have to do with flooded streets in Kashmir? Or how does a judge getting transferred in one state connect to a bomb scare at a college in Delhi? Well, think of us as detectives today. We're going to treat every single headline not as a separate event, but as a clue that reveals the incredibly complex, sometimes kind of contradictory, but always fascinating story of India right now. It's all one giant tangled web, and we're about to start pulling on the threads. So let's get started.
And here's how we're going to do it. This is our roadmap. We'll kick things off with the money, the economic engine. Then we'll get into the political chess moves in power plays. After that, we'll look at a nation under pressure from all sides. Then we'll zoom right into society on the ground. Look for some hope with glimmers of the future. And finally, we'll pull all the way back to see India's place on the world stage. Let's go.
First up, the economic engine. This is all about the money, right? It's the financial currents that are pushing us forward and sometimes holding us back. We're talking about the big picture decisions, the global trade wins, and the huge national projects that are literally shaping our future. You could say it's the foundation for pretty much everything else. Now, the key phrase here is that chain reaction. This is super important. The finance ministry isn't just worried about the obvious direct hit from these new 50% US tariffs. No, their concern goes way deeper. They're talking about the ripples in a pond. So the first ripple, the primary effect, that's easy. An apparel factory that exports to the US suddenly has its orders canceled. Direct hit. But then comes the second ripple, the secondary effect. That factory now has to lay off hundreds of workers. And then the third ripple, the tertiary effect. Those workers who just lost their jobs, they can't pay for their kids' tuition anymore. They stop buying as much from the local Kirana store, the little tea stall outside the factory gates. Its business just got cut in half. That is the chain reaction. It's a domino effect that starts with a policy decision thousands of miles away, but ends up hitting a family right here at home.
So on one side, you have the country kind of bracing for impact, right? Getting ready for this potential economic storm. There's a real sense of anxiety. But then, and this is what's so fascinating, on the very same day, we get the total opposite. The Union Cabinet gives the green light for Ahmedabad to bid for the 2030 Commonwealth Games. I mean, think about that. Hosting an event like this is the ultimate power move. It's a massive declaration of confidence. You're committing billions to new stadiums and transport, and you're telling the entire world, hey, look at us, we're ready. So you have these two powerful, completely opposite forces at play at the exact same time. A cautious defense against an external threat, and a super bold, ambitious leap onto the world stage. It's this incredible balancing act between managing risk and projecting strength. All right, so from the world of money, let's shift gears and talk about power. Because let's be honest, who's making the decisions is everything. This next batch of stories is all about the political moves and the legal maneuvers that decide who's really in charge, how they're using that power, and the constant tug of war for influence that's happening just beneath the surface. Okay, quick class pop quiz. How do judges in our high courts and the Supreme Court actually get their jobs? It's not like they just apply on a website. It happens through this really unique system called the Collegium. Basically, as the slide shows, it's a small group of the most senior Supreme Court judges. They meet, they decide who should be appointed or transferred, and then they send their recommendation to the government. Now, the whole point of the system was to keep the judiciary independent from politics. But, and this is a big but, it's often criticized for being, well, a bit of a black box. It's literally judges picking other judges behind closed doors. So it's this constant debate between protecting judicial freedom and having public transparency. And right now, that system is very, very active. And when I say active, I mean it. Check out this number, 14.
That's how many high court judges the Collegium just recommended be transferred. We're talking about a major shuffle across 9 different states. Now, 14 might not sound like a huge number, but in the judicial world, that is a massive shakeup. It's like if a giant company suddenly told 14 of its top executives they were all moving to different countries next week. It sends ripples through the entire system, signaling a huge period of change within the top levels of our legal world. And here's where you see how the machine works when it's really humming along. While those 14 transfers are in the works, the Collegium also recommended 2 new judges for the Supreme Court itself, the highest court in the land. And get this, just 2 days later, 2 days, the government approved it and they were sworn in. Now, for anyone who knows how government bureaucracy usually works, a 2-day turnaround is basically the speed of light. It's almost unheard of. And what that signals is an incredible level of coordination and agreement between the top judges and the government. In a relationship that can often be tense, this kind of speed tells a story all by itself.
Of course, power isn't just used in the quiet chambers of the Supreme Court. It's fought over out in the open every single day. Just look at these 2 stories. Over in West Bengal, the governor fires a university's vice chancellor over corruption charges. Now, on the surface, that sounds like a straightforward administrative action, but you have to remember the context. This is happening in the middle of a long-running, very public political feud between the governor, who represents the central government, and the state government. So this move becomes another play in a much bigger chess game. At the same time, in Bihar, opposition leaders are launching a massive march for voter rights. Why? They're claiming that hundreds of thousands of names have been illegally deleted from the voter lists. This isn't just a protest. This is basically firing the starting gun for the next election campaign.
Okay, so from the pressures of politics, we're now moving to a different kind of pressure altogether. This is the kind that puts the entire country and its people under a very real, very physical strain. We're talking about environmental crises, security threats, the kind of stuff that pushes our systems and our people to the absolute limit.
Let's start in Jammu and Kashmir. For 4 days straight, the rain just has not stopped. The main river, the Jhelum, is flowing way above the danger mark. We're seeing thousands of people being evacuated from their homes, the Air Force is flying helicopters in for dramatic rescues from rooftops, and critical infrastructure, roads, bridges, communication lines, is literally just crumbling, washing away in landslides and floods. It is a powerful and pretty humbling reminder that no matter how much we plan, sometimes nature just decides to be the boss.
Now, keep that image of the floods in your mind, because this is where our whole theme of connection gets really complicated. Look at this quote. Fighting floods in one valley will potentially weaken green safeguards in the next. So what does that actually mean? It means at the exact same time that we have helicopters rescuing people from floodwaters, the government has decided to exempt massive new dam projects in the same region from detailed environmental studies. So you see the incredible paradox here. We are literally fighting the devastating effects of an extreme weather event, while at the same time, we're fast-tracking huge projects that could have their own massive environmental impact on the line. It's this dizzying balancing act between development, security, and the environment, all happening at once.
From a natural disaster, let's turn to a man-made one. We're moving from the mountains down to the capital. Just look at this chart of Delhi's air quality. An AQI of 178. You want to know what the safe limit is? 50. 50. So yeah, the air is more than 3 times as toxic as it should be. And with that number, Delhi's officially back on the list of the world's 10 most polluted cities. The source I was looking at called this the annual pollution saga, and that is the perfect description. It's this predictable, awful public health crisis that hits the city every single winter. We all know it's coming, we know what causes it, and yet every year it just happens again.
And as if breathing toxic air wasn't stressful enough, imagine being a student or a parent in Delhi on this day. 20. That's how many colleges across the city got a bomb threat in their email, all at the same time. Now, thankfully, every single one of them turned out to be a hoax. But here's the thing about a hoax. It still works. It achieves the main goal of terrorism, which is to create chaos and fear. It forces thousands of people to evacuate, it shuts down a part of the city, and it ties up a huge amount of police resources. So even though the bomb wasn't real, the fear and the disruption absolutely were.
So we've seen all these big national level pressures, but now let's zoom in. How does all this stuff actually affect individual people and their communities? This is where the abstract headlines hit the ground and lead to calls for justice, new rules for everyday life, and even shared moments of tragedy that cross borders.
So in the middle of all these huge crises, how does the system respond to things on a smaller scale?
Well, here are two really interesting and totally different examples. First, the National Human Rights Commission, or NHRC, has stepped in on its own in the horrific case of a disabled woman's death in Uttar Pradesh. They're like a national watchdog. Now, they can't actually prosecute anyone, but when they issue a notice, it gets a ton of media attention and puts a huge amount of pressure on local police to investigate properly. It's a top-down push for accountability. On the other hand, look at what happened in Rajasthan. After a lot of public pressure from citizens and a Supreme Court order, the state has finally created new rules for managing stray dogs. This is a total bottom-up victory, where regular people demanding change actually made it happen. So on the same day, you see both kinds of civic action at work. And then, sometimes, a story from half a world away just cuts right through all the local news. A shooting at a school in Minneapolis, in the US, where 2 children were killed. The source calls this a uniquely American tragedy, and it is. It's tied to their own specific issues and laws, but the shock and the pain of it, that's universal. It becomes a headline here in India not because it affects our policy, but because it affects us as human beings. For just a moment, it connects all of us in a shared sense of grief.
Okay, we've been through some heavy stuff, so let's take a breath and shift gears, because it's not all bad news. It's easy to get lost in the problems, but on any given day, even with all the crises, there are real, undeniable signs of progress. Let's look at some of those glimmers of hope that also made the headlines. And this right here, this is a fantastic example of real, tangible progress. 100%. The railways in the state of Tripura are now fully electrified. This isn't just a plan or a promise. This is actual steel on the ground. It means faster trains, cleaner trains, and more reliable service for a part of the country that has always struggled with connectivity. This is a huge deal. It's connecting people and businesses, it's cutting down on pollution, and it's literally laying the tracks for future economic growth. This is a solid, clear-cut win. And it's not just Tripura that's pushing ahead. We're seeing a much bigger trend on the green energy front. On the same day, we learn that 5 different states, Gujarat, Bihar, West Bengal, Telangana, and Tripura again, are all bringing in new rules to make it easier for people to install solar panels on their rooftops. And this is so important because it shows that the move to clean energy isn't just some grand plan from the central government, it's happening from the ground up in state after state. It's a decentralized push that lets individual people become part of the solution. This is what progress really looks like, not one giant leap, but thousands of smaller steps being taken all across the country.
Okay, for our last section, let's pull the camera all the way back out. We've looked at our internal economy, our power struggles, our societal pressures, and our glimmers of hope. So how does all of this fit into the bigger global picture? What's happening out there that's shaping our strategy back here?
Let's quickly connect these 3 final major international stories. First, there's a huge shift in our own defense strategy. The defense minister has basically said our military needs to get ready for long, drawn-out marathon conflicts, not just short sprint wars. This is a direct response to seeing conflicts like the one in Ukraine drag on for years. Second, a massive policy change is coming from the US that's going to affect thousands of Indian tech workers, a major overhaul of the H-1B visa system. This creates a ton of uncertainty for a lot of people. And third, the crisis in the Middle East is getting worse, with Israel readying for a major ground offensive. And at the same time, in a slightly surreal twist, the US is already holding talks about what Gaza will look like after the war. Each of these stories shows just how much the world is changing, and how India is constantly having to adapt and find its way through it all. So we started all this by asking how a trade war, a flood, and university politics could possibly be connected. And we've journeyed through the economic anxieties, the political power plays, the environmental pressures, and the undeniable signs of progress that all happened in just one single day. Each one is a thread of vulnerability, a thread of ambition, a thread of crisis, and a thread of hope. And so we end with this question. As these threads are pulled every single day, do they just tangle up into a giant, chaotic mess? Or are they, slowly and sometimes painfully, being woven together into a stronger, more complex, and more resilient national fabric? That's the question we're left with today. Follow us on Spotify and YouTube to listen to this podcast every morning at 8 a.m. We sincerely hope that by bringing you just the facts, free from bias and emotional spin, we've empowered you to form your own clear understanding of the day's events. We'll be back with more headlines for you tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. Until then, keep smiling and making this world a better place for everyone. Namaskar.